Okay, you've got 10 seconds. Got 10 seconds. Okay, if I could have your attention, please. Let's debrief up at the front. Okay, put your hand up if you're not talking. Hand up if you're not talking. Thank you. By the way, that works in any size group. All right. Love the engagement, by the way. We'll have some opportunities again a little bit later to engage. All right. So hopefully you've got your approximate percentages. So let's look and see how we did. How many had stand up as a table if IQ is your top percentage? How about 70%? Who would IQ is 70%? Stand up. Come on, IQ's got to be worth something, right? What about 50%? Anybody have it as 30%? Okay, one table. One table. All right, thank you. All right, that's the very smart table. Okay, what about technical skills or job knowledge? Who had that as the highest? Stand up. No? Was it 70%? Okay, what about emotional intelligence? Stand up if your table had that as the highest. All right, stay standing. Now, just look around. Approximately what percentage of this audience is that? Pretty close to 100%, isn't it? Okay, go ahead and sit back down. What I love about that exercise is that's not me being some sort of leadership guru standing up here telling you about some arcane research study that has nothing to do with you. I'll do that a little bit later. This is in your own personal experience. What you have found makes a leader either exceptional or poor doesn't have much to do with their IQ or their technical skills. It has everything to do with this thing called emotional intelligence. Now, one thing I want to make clear, we're not saying IQ and technical skills aren't important. Harvard research showed that they're threshold competencies. In other words, you have to have a certain amount of IQ and technical skills to do any job. I've done this program for surgeons. Their threshold's pretty high. But even in the case of surgeons, once you get over the threshold, getting more IQ and technical skills does not significantly differentiate performance. In fact, in the Harvard study, EI accounted for twice as much as IQ and technical skills combined in terms of determining who would be star performers. But you saw that right here in your own personal experience. So that's the why does this matter? Because in your own experience, what makes a leader poor or exceptional is this thing called emotional intelligence. And here's my question for you. Would you be on anyone's exceptional leader list? And when I first looked at this, I thought, uh-oh, I think I'm on some people's poor leader list. Now, it's kind of a spectrum, right, of poor to exceptional. Many of you are, probably somewhere between good and great. But how do you get to that next level? Well, does that mean? That's why this thing called emotional intelligence is so important. All right, I'm going to share a quote with you to kind of summarize this. I'm going to quote Warren Buffett. You probably didn't think I was going to be quoting Warren Buffett in this presentation. If you could put the screen back up for me, James, that'd be great. Warren Buffett said this. He said, if you have an IQ of 150, sell 30 points to someone else. You need to be smart, but not a genius. All right? You're all in the room because you're smart enough. And by the way, you can't get smarter anyways. Yes, of course you need to keep up your job knowledge and technical skills, but that's not what's going to give you that influence internally. That's not going to get you that seat at the table. It's going to be how you connect. It's going to be how you show up as an exceptional leader. So if it's that important, what exactly is emotional intelligence? Well, we have a model. And for those of you that have kids or nieces and nephews or grandkids, you might recognize this model. It's the one with the little toy model. Self-awareness is at the foundation. And it runs through everything else. All right, so what is self-awareness? Well, simply, are you aware of the emotions driving your behavior and what impact that has on your leadership? Okay, but what's an example? When I was first learning this, if I was in a meeting and I was presenting an idea and someone's phone went off, no, just kidding. And someone made it, actually for some people that the phone can be the trigger, but in my case, if I was presenting an idea and someone criticized my idea, I would immediately get defensive. That's a natural emotional response to feeling criticized. Does that get me on their poor or their exceptional leader list? Gets me on their poor leader list because they don't, by the way, do they think they're criticizing me? No, they're just trying to make a suggestion, or so that they don't feel like I'm listening, they don't feel like I value their input, right to their poor leader list. So I have to be aware of these emotions. Then in that moment, once I'm aware of the emotions, then I can manage myself. So I can remain calm when there's all those emails and things aren't working out the way I want to, and I'm not getting the answers and people aren't behaving the way I need them to. I can stay calm so that I can connect and really start to understand what motivates and drives people. How do you get the best out of the people around you, not just your direct reports, but your peers and even your senior leaders? And then finally, all of that culminates in personal leadership, which is where we do some of the more difficult things, like stepping into difficult conversations that we all know we have to have. Now, in our training, this is 3 days, this whole model. This afternoon, at the end of the day, I'm going to have a session focusing on building relationships, which is really that third part of the model, the emotional connection. Then tomorrow morning, I'm going to do a session on increasing your influence, building your reputation, which is really the top of the model. So what I'm going to focus on today is primarily these bottom 2 parts of the model, because they're really the foundation. There's no single definition of emotional intelligence. Dan Goleman wrote the book all the way back in 1995, so it's going to stay around, this concept of emotional intelligence. They all go something like this. There's 2 parts to it. There's recognizing, understanding, and managing our own emotions. That's the bottom 2 parts of the model. Then there's recognizing, understanding, and influencing the emotions of others. That's the top 2 parts of the model. A favorite quote I have, kind of summarizing what emotional intelligence is, Clarence Francis said this. He said, you can buy people's time, you can buy their physical presence at a given place. I love this part. He said, you can even buy a measured amount of muscular motions per hour, but you cannot buy enthusiasm, you cannot buy loyalty, you cannot buy the devotion of their hearts. This you must earn. That's what your exceptional leaders did. You would go to the wall for them. You would give your best for those exceptional leaders. Well, that's what you want to become. You want to become an exceptional leader that everyone around you and above you is giving their best for. All right, so this all seems pretty cognitively intuitive. We're all pretty bright people. So why is it then that sometimes smart people fail? You probably all know really bright people that you met in college or uni, or you met at work and thought, wow, they're going to be the next head of a division, and they haven't done that well. Well, the Center for Creative Leadership in the United States did a very similar study where they looked at why promising careers derail. So they took people that were high in IQ and technical skills, those top 2 circles, watched those who got promoted, then rather than following the careers of the people that did well, they followed the careers of people who did poorly. So kind of like what was happening to me. I'm pretty bright, I get promoted, and then I'm not doing well. They found there were 2 major career derailers. The first career derailer seems obvious. It's an inability to manage relationships. If you're going to motivate, inspire, influence, you've got to be able to manage relationships. Well, the second major career derailer is kind of hard to get. So I'm going to show you a video that will help you understand the second major career derailer that they found in this Center for Creative Leadership study.
These things are always difficult. I understand. Because of the merger, we now have to do with everything, including to CIOs, you and Bill. You know I only need one guy. I understand. Yet they still have an areas integration project ever. Server, storage, databases. This stuff was never meant to work together. It needs the right guy. I understand. Kevin, you're the guy. I'm the guy. You're the guy.
And that's when it hits you. You are so ready for IBM.
What about Phil? Phil? Oh, he volunteered for some job in Paris. He's out of the loop. You're the guy. Paris?
An inability to manage change. Now, the good thing for all of you is you don't have much change going on in your environment, right? No, I'm kidding. In fact, I got to talk to a number of you at the cocktail reception last night, and that's one theme that I heard over and over again is kind of the uncertainty and all the change, and you make plans and the plans change. And I think it was Tim from Chcorenetglobalsummits Global this morning that said to me, everyone's moving fast, but the real estate's moving slow. So that makes it hard, right? So isn't it amazing, though, that managing change can derail a career to the same degree that managing relationships can? So how you are responding to all this uncertainty, how you're dealing with all this change, can have a big impact on your career and your effectiveness. And the other reason I like this study is that these 2 factors, difficult and challenging relationships and change and uncertainty, they actually affect our emotional system in the same way. So I promised you a little bit of science. I'm going to share that with you now. You don't have to be a biology major to understand this. It's very simple, yet very profound. At the base of our brain, that yellow part, right back here in the back of our neck, that's your brainstem. Not very important in terms of managing emotions. Pretty important if you want to breathe, regulate your heart rate, maintain your body temperature, things like that. Okay? Handles your autonomic functions. The critical part of the brain in terms of managing emotions is the small almond-sized part of the brain called the amygdala. And it's the part of our brain that allowed us to learn for the first time. That's how we know you can improve your emotional intelligence. The amygdala can learn. So that little defensive reaction I have when I feel criticized, I'm not stuck with that. I can change that. It's not easy, but I can change it. Now, the amygdala is our source of emotional memory, particularly the negative memories. If we felt let down or put down or not included, it will store those emotions. It's like a little computer chip. And finally, the amygdala answers one critical question of human survival. Who knows what that is? Absolutely, fight or flight. So it's a part of our brain that manages our fight or flight responses. All right, I'm going to come back to the amygdala, but first I'm going to share with you a part of the brain you're probably more familiar with. That's your neocortex. That's where your IQ is. It's also the site of your prefrontal lobe, which is where you have working memory. And working memory is where you hold your thoughts. Now, when you're calm, you can hold 6 or 7 thoughts plus or minus 2. That's why it's easy to remember kind of a 7-digit or shorter phone number, but harder to remember a longer phone number. Now, when you have that many places of thoughts and working memory, you can think very complex thoughts. Someone can say something to you, you can access your long-term memory, you can see a number of options, and you can form a response, all very quickly. For those of you that are computer literate, the working memory is like our RAM. If you're not computer literate, forget what I just said. All right? But think of the working memory as the pipeline to your IQ and all your job knowledge. All right, in the design of the brain, which of these two parts, the neocortex or the amygdala, do you think would respond to a perceived threat first? The amygdala. Makes sense, because this is an emotional intelligence program. Well, in the early 90s, as Dan Goleman was writing the emotional intelligence book, there was groundbreaking research being done in New York City at New York University by Joseph Ledoux, where they were able to monitor brain chemical activity for the first time using what at the time was new MRI and PET scan technology. And they did determine that the amygdala does in fact respond up to 100 times faster than your IQ brain when it perceives a threat. So if you remember nothing else from this session, remember this, that we feel before we think. Emotions come before thought. We're all wired that way. Okay, let's think about how that system works when it's somewhere where it serves you. So let's say you're out in the jungle. Now I know a lot of you don't spend a lot of time in the jungle, but go with me here because it's a good metaphor. You're in the jungle and a tiger jumps out at you. Within 85 milliseconds, your amygdala senses the threat from the tiger, causes the release of chemicals that will cascade through your body, blood moves to the major muscle groups, your heart rate increases, you're ready for fight or flight. In addition, the amygdala will release chemicals into your brain that reduces that working memory, reduces your ability to think a complex thought. Have you ever heard yourself say, I was so angry I couldn't think straight? Or you have that difficult conversation with a partner or spouse, and 20 minutes later think of all the good comebacks? Right? Or in a business meeting, you're presenting an idea, somebody senior is challenging it, and you're not articulating a good response, and after the meeting you think, oh, I should have said this and I should have said that. Because in that moment, your amygdala didn't want you thinking a complex thought. It was feeling threatened. Now, why would your emotional system, why would the amygdala not want you thinking complex thoughts in that moment? It thinks you're fighting tigers. Right? You don't have time to sit around and say, gee, I wonder what kind of tiger that is. Right? How can I best build relevance with that tiger? No, it's going to react and respond right away. It doesn't cognate. It simply reacts and responds. When the amygdala does that, when it reacts, releases the chemicals into your body and brain, reduces your working memory, it leads you to a default behavior. Whatever behavior you've learned to survive. When that happens, we call that an amygdala hijack. Because the amygdala can hijack your thinking mind and move you toward a less skillful default behavior. Now, there are degrees of hijack. There are very high degrees. That's when the tiger jumps out at you, or somebody's yelling, or the woman lifts the bus off the baby. We see less of that in business. What we see more in business are the low degree hijacks. You get that email and it's not what you wanted, and you get frustrated and you type, and hit reply to all. Okay? Right? Or you're running late and then